be going over what the ACE history papers, both 1 and 2, will be looking like, and their rubrics for the new syllabus 9489. I'm not going to go into exactly how you would respond to these. I'll do another video on those and what it would look like. But this is just a brief overview of specifically what these papers look like and what their rubrics look like and what the requirements are. I'd like to just go ahead and clarify that I do not work for Cambridge. I don't have anything to do with the ACE program other than just being a history teacher that's taught this and gone to the trainings enough times. And this is in large part mostly for my students, but I know some teachers and other students watch this. So just to clarify, I do not work for the program. So first, I'm going to go over paper 1, the basics. For paper 1, you will read 4 sources on a specific topic, and this will rotate yearly. For the first official year, it's going to be the same as it always has been. Like for US, it's always been causes of the Civil War. It actually doesn't officially start until 2021, 2022. However, it does also, you can begin viewing it this school year, the 2021 school year. And so you'll have the same topic 2 years in a row. So it will start rotating in the 2022-2023 school year. It will rotate in order of the units typically. If you have questions, it is also in the syllabus, the order that it will specifically rotate. But anyway, so you're going to answer 2 questions on those 4 sources that you get. Question A is a compare and contrast question, and question B requires assessment of a statement. You will have an hour and 15 minutes to complete your paper 1. This is longer than past years. In past years, it was only 60 minutes. Now you have 75 minutes to do it. This paper is worth a total of 40 points. It has been in the past and still is. Question A is worth 15, where question B is worth 25. So this right here is what paper 1 looks like whenever you see it. This is just a digital version of a paper 1 that you can be printed out. These are one of the booklets that's been scanned. You'll see on the front page, it tells you have an hour and 15 minutes, and it tells you from what point the exam will be taken. So this starts in 2021. Each total mark is 40 points, and the question total is in the brackets, or the amount of marks you can get for each one is in the brackets. So scroll down. The first question is always the European option. This is section A. So if you're taking Euro, this will be what you start with. You start with section page 2. So the first page of your question is typically just sources A and B, but this one gets A, B, and C in here. Sometimes you get all 3 in here. And then you'll get source D. And then underneath those, you get your 2 questions. So you have question A, you answer both parts of the question. So source A, one thing different from past years is it tells you in very clear language to read sources C and D for this one, so you won't be using the other sources for this question. And you'll have your question right here that you're trying to answer, and it's worth a total of 15 points. Whereas question B is right under it, and it tells you to read all of the sources. This is an improvement from past years because previously it would say things like read sources A to D to determine how far, and then that'll tell you the question. Like it would say how far or do sources A to D support the statement that Bismarck always intended to use the war to achieve German unification. It would say this, but so I thought it was pretty clear that it said to use all the sources, but some people would be confused because of the wording of it and only use the 2 sources listed. I had students do that in the past. Apparently a lot of people did. So they fixed that wording here. So that's a really big plus that they've done. Then the next one is the American option. So if you're taking US, you would be going to page 4. Same thing here. You have your sources and your 2 questions, and they've done it again where they tell you specifically very big bold letters which sources for A, and in big letters and bold letters to read all sources for B. And then your final one is international. You can see here it's the same thing, except for I wanted to point this one out because you can also see here that there's a possibility that you will get political cartoons. Now, in my experience, political cartoons are far more likely to happen with international. Not saying that you will get a political cartoon, but if you're going to get a political cartoon, it's more likely to happen with international history than with the others, though I'd say it's kind of possible for the others as well, but you're just more likely with international. And you can see here it's the same stuff here. You get the same type of questions here. So for your question A, regardless of what what topic you're doing. It's always going to be a compare and contrast of two sources. So what you will have to do here is clearly state overall, do the sources agree, disagree, or are they similar or different, and how far. There'll be a statement, and you'll have to assess basically, do these sources agree with this? How far do the two sources agree with each other on this statement? So you're comparing the sources to each other, make that clear. So you'll need, I'd say, a paragraph, though not necessarily, I'm just saying the way to differentiate it. You can write it at however many paragraphs you need, but you need to have a clear explanation of similarities between the two sources, evaluate those similarities, and use quotes. It can even be just like a phrase. And then you do the same thing with differences. Explain the differences with quotes and evaluate what that means for the two sources. And then you would wrap it up by evaluating how far do they overall agree or disagree. So in other words, do they mostly agree? Do they somewhat agree? Do they mostly disagree? Do they somewhat disagree? And this is where you're going to really begin to use your contextual knowledge. So if you know what you know about the history, what you know about the sources, like are the two sources from abolitionist newspapers, so you can play that off of each other. That's what you'd be doing there. I'll be showing that whenever I do another video on how to answer paper 1 question A. Here's the rubric. The rubrics have changed for the papers. The rubrics are a lot clearer in their language, so this is a positive. The point levels are the same. It goes to level 0, but I didn't put that on there. Level 0, so you can get 0 points if what you wrote has absolutely nothing to do with anything. So for level 4, you're making a developed comparison between the two sources. You have points of similarity and difference, and you've shown contextual awareness, and you've evaluated the sources. So you can get a level 4 without contextual awareness or without source evaluation, but you have to do one of them really well. But it says and or. Level 3, you compare the views and identify similarities and differences. The views expressed in the two sources, you've compared them, you've identified differences and similarities, and you've supported them with source content. So basically the difference here between level 3 and level 4 is that you're not attempting to use any sort of contextual awareness, and you're not really evaluating the sources themselves. For level 2, you compare the views and identify similarities or differences. You identify relevant similarities or differences. So you see here, you're not really at the top here, you're not identifying similarities and differences, you're doing one or the other. So you're pretty much giving a one-sided answer. Or for a level 2, you can do both. You can identify similarities and differences, but you've just stated that they are, and you haven't really supported it from the sources. So if you're not giving any support for what you're saying, but you've identified similarities and differences, you could still fall into level 2 instead of jumping to level 3. And level 1, you're just describing. You might be paraphrasing the content, but you're not actually making real comparisons other than very simple ones, like one's a letter and one's a speech. So for question B, this is your source analysis question. You're analyzing all 4 sources based off of a prompt. So you're going to be saying how far the sources support or challenge the statement in the prompt. You're going to be using all 4 sources here. You're going to explicitly state how which one of the sources support, challenge, or is neutral to the prompt. You're going to support your claim with direct evidence, so you're going to be using quotes here again. Assess the usefulness or reliability of the sources, so you're going to be thinking about where the source came from, who wrote it, where did it come from, when was it written, why was it written, who was the audience, why did they write it, what was the overall purpose of this source, because sources don't just exist for the sake of existing, they have a purpose. Like if it's an article in a newspaper, it might be an editorial that's intended to persuade people's opinion on a topic. If it's a memoir, the person writing the memoir could be trying to frame their legacy for how they want people to view them, so on and so forth. And finally, you're going to conclude your paper by arguing the case for support or challenge. So basically, the question will be, how far do the sources support the statement, so on and so forth. So now, basically, in your concluding paragraph, you're kind of answering that question directly. You've argued all the points, and now you're going to say which one is the most accurate and why. All right, here's your rubric. This goes all the way up to level 5, so you can get a total of 25 points for the question B. So for level 5, you're using all of the sources to reach a sustained judgment. So pretty much you understand what the sources are saying, you understand what the demands of the question, and that's what you focused on. Additionally, you have given your judgment throughout the entire paper and supported it throughout the paper. So you would do this by writing a thesis statement and then arguing how each one of those sources either support or challenge the statement. And you're going to be considering the sources themselves, the relevance of them, and you're going to be using a lot of content knowledge as evidence to support your prompt, or not your prompt, your thesis. Level 4, you're going to be evaluating the sources to support and or challenge the statement. So you've got a clear understanding of how the source content supports and challenges the statement. You've evaluated the material and context. You've considered nature, origin, and purpose of the sources. So you've just not done that full supported judgment throughout for level 4. Level 3, you use those sources to support and challenge the statement. You make valid points from all the sources to both challenge and support the statement. As long as you have both in there, you're good to go. You can get to your level 3. Level 2, you support or challenge the statement. So you're one-sided. You're not arguing for the challenge and the support. You're only making valid statements for one side. And level 1, you're not making valid use of the sources. You've got content from the sources in your paper, but you're not really you're not providing anything useful in it, essentially. And level 0, you just wrote, I don't know, you wrote whatever you wanted.